Good morning, gardeners, and welcome to Wednesday, June 14th. My name is Catherine, and I created a show called Good Morning Gardeners, even though I can't grow green things because I am referring to gardening metaphorically. We're planting the seeds for a better day. We're starting our day by getting in the mindset to cultivate a better life for ourselves, better communities, and a better world. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to add Good Morning Gardeners to your morning routine. I do my best to wake you up with positive and mentally stimulating ideas, but sometimes I miss things. If you have something to add to the ideas I discuss, please chime in the comment section below. Today is World Blood Donor Day. This event serves to raise awareness for the need for safe blood and blood products and to thank voluntary unpaid blood donors for their life-saving gifts of blood. Safe blood, saved lives. Regular blood donation by a sufficient number of healthy people is needed to ensure that blood will always be available whenever and wherever it is needed. You can find a blood donation point near you by visiting redcross.org/give blood, or just click on the link in the description of this video. So if you missed me yesterday and are expecting an explanation for the unforeseen circumstances that prevented me from recording, all I will say for your own benefit is that I got food poisoning. I'm better now, and I want to talk today about fear. That's going to be the theme for this morning's episode. Now, I spoke about fear a few episodes back, but I want to approach it from a different angle today. Last time I talked about the overlap between fear, introversion, anxiety, and inhibition in the context of getting things done or being productive. Today, I want to talk about the importance of mental clarity and how fear can warp your perspective. Now, when I say fear, I am not referring only to the intense high cortisol spike, imminent danger kind of fear. I am also referring to the sneaky sorts of fears that creep into our minds without us noticing. This could include the fear of being wrong, the fear of being judged, or the fear of being misunderstood. Basically, every single thing under the umbrella of fear. Fear is like a primal emotion, which is in our amygdala, right? Which is a different part of the brain from the prefrontal cortex, which handles most of our logical thinking. Now, we all know someone we have all known someone at some point in our lives who we believe to be misguided. And by logical deduction, this means that all of us at some point in our lives have been or currently are the misguided person. Now, I believe that in order for all of us to collectively move toward an environment of mental clarity and normalize the adoption of useful perspectives that are closer to actual reality, we must all strive to release our fears of being wrong. Unfortunately, I don't believe I own a book that speaks directly and specifically to what I am trying to get out here, but when I think of this phenomenon, I think of Talking to Strangers by Malcom Gladwell. Now, it was difficult to narrow down the exact passage that I wanted to read to you from this book today because in Talking to Strangers, Malcom Gladwell dives deep into psychological and criminological studies that have been done over the past century, and in the process, he builds a really powerful case for giving strangers the benefit of the doubt, or, phrased another way, not being afraid of strangers by default. Now, this book is one of my top recommendations for gaining a clearer mindset and a better understanding of why humans do what they do and why things are the way that they are. If you don't own it already, I highly suggest that you order yourself a copy, and you can find it at the link in my bio. So, in Talking to Strangers, Malcom Gladwell describes a phenomenon called coupling, which proves that many social problems are often linked to one simple, often innocuous element at play. The primary example that he gives is the coupling of gas ovens and suicide in England. Between the years of 1960 and 1972, suicide rates decreased in tandem with the decrease of gas ovens in homes as these ovens were phased out. Malcom goes on to describe a series of law enforcement experiments that were done in Kansas City, which ultimately culminated in the current-day common practice of American police officers making up excuses to stop suspicious-looking vehicles and then searching the vehicles for illegal contraband. Now, in the early 1990s, Kansas City was facing a horrible gun violence problem, and murder rates were increasing year after year. So this practice began as an experiment and was a desperate attempt to save lives. The officers who participated in this program focused on a single district in Kansas City, and within that area, they were freed from all other law enforcement obligations. They didn't have to answer radio calls or rush to accident scenes. Their instructions were clear. Watch out for what you think are suspicious-looking drivers. Use whatever pretext you can find in the traffic code to pull them over. If you're still suspicious, search the car and confiscate any weapon you find. The officers worked every night from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m., 7 days a week for 200 consecutive days. And what happened? Outside the district where they worked, where police business was conducted as usual, crime remained as bad as ever. But inside the district where this experiment was done, all the new focused police work cut gun crimes, shootings, murders, and woundings in half. So, because this tactic was so wildly effective in Kansas City, other police departments began adopting this same tactic, but on a much larger scale, in communities that didn't have horrible crime. And then they started using this tactic as an attempt to cut down on other forms of crime, like drug crime. So the police would find any, reason in the traffic code to pull over a vehicle, and then if the driver looked suspicious, or if anything about the contents of the vehicle that they could see looked suspicious, they would use that as an excuse to search the vehicle, not only for guns, but for anything illegal, but obviously especially for drugs. And for this tactic to be used effectively, police officers had to be suspicious about every single car that they stopped, because they had to overanalyze the nonverbal communication of the driver. They were watching the driver very closely to see, are they acting suspicious? They were, just staring at all the contents of the vehicle and asking themselves, is that suspicious? There's a piece of a parcel or a package sticking out from underneath a seat. What could be in that parcel? It could be, a gift, but it also could be a package of drugs, So this caused, the overall culture and police tactics to lean toward suspicion of every single vehicle that they stopped. But because the Kansas City experiment was so successful due to the phenomenon of coupling, meaning gun violence and drivers who were carrying guns in their vehicles, the police tactics were not successful when expanded to the national level and used to enforce other kinds of crime. In fact, it seems as though, and I'm sure many of us could agree, that they are counterproductive. The high suspicion frequent vehicle stops made a lot more sense in the high crime areas of Kansas City in the early 90s, but didn't make sense for larger areas with lower crime rates, and it fostered a dangerous level of suspicion and fear in police officers. So, talking to strangers culminates with the case of Sandra Bland, an innocent Black woman who was the victim of one of these high suspicion random vehicle stops, and it would seem through a series of miscommunications and counterproductive police tactics, was arrested and tragically died in jail at her own hands. So once again, Malcom goes into great depth in this case, so I can't exactly read a summary to you of this case from this book. Once again, I just highly recommend that you get it and read it for yourself, or if you prefer to listen to books. The first time I read this, I listened to it on Audible, and it's a masterpiece. I highly recommend. Anyway, I'll stop saying highly recommend now. But for now, I just want to read an excerpt from the part of the book where Malcom breaks down the police deposition in which Sandra Bland's arresting officer, Brian Encina, is interviewed. Malcom writes, "To Encinia's mind, Bland's demeanor fits the profile of a potentially dangerous criminal. She is agitated, jumpy, irritable, confrontational, and volatile. He thinks she's hiding something. This is dangerously flawed thinking at the best of times. Human beings are not transparent, but when is this kind of thinking most dangerous? When people we observe are mismatched, when they do not behave the way we expect them to behave. Sandra Bland, in this case, was mismatched. She looks to Encinia's eye like a criminal, but she's not. She's just upset. In the aftermath of her death, it was revealed that she had 10 previous encounters with police over the course of her adult life, including 5 traffic stops, which had left her with almost $8,000 in outstanding fines. She had tried to commit suicide the year before, after the loss of a baby." So here we have a troubled person with a history of medical and psychiatric issues, trying to pull her life together. She's moved to a new town, she's starting a new job, and just as she arrives to begin this new chapter in her life, she's pulled over by a police officer, repeating a scenario that has left her deeply in debt. And for what? For failing to signal a lane change when a police car is driving up rapidly behind her. All of a sudden, her fragile new beginning is cast into doubt. In the 3 days she spent in jail before taking her own life, Sandra Bland was distraught, weeping constantly, making phone call after phone call. She was in crisis. But Encina, with all of the false confidence that believing in transparency gives us, reads her emotionality and volatility as evidence of something sinister. Encinia's interviewing officer, Renfro, asks about the crucial moment when Encina requests that Bland put out her cigarette. Why didn't he just say, "Hey, your cigarette ashes are getting on me"? Encina replied, "I wanted to make sure that she had it out without throwing it at me, or just get it out of her hand." Renfro then asks why, if that were the case, he didn't immediately tell her why she was under arrest. Encina, "'Cause I was trying to defend myself and get her controlled." He is terrified of her, and being terrified of a perfectly innocent stranger holding a cigarette is the price you pay for not defaulting to truth. It was common in the Bland postmortem to paint Encina as an officer without empathy, but that characterization misses the point. Someone without empathy is indifferent to another's feelings. Encina is not indifferent to Bland's feelings. When he approaches her car, one of the first things he says to her is, "What's wrong?" When he returns to her car after checking her license, he asks again, "Are you okay?" He picks up on her emotional discomfort immediately. It's just that he completely misinterprets what her feelings mean. He becomes convinced that he is sliding into a confrontation. He is sliding into a frightening confrontation with a dangerous woman. So, trust me, I know this topic is heavy. Personally, I hate thinking about this kind of thing, but I believe it's important to learn lessons from tragedies like this. So for our feel-good moment today, I want to read from The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, a passage that I believe speaks to one of the lessons that we should learn from things like this. Mark writes, "You are wrong about everything, but so am I. 500 years ago, cartographers believed that California was an island. Doctors believed that slicing a person's arm open, or causing bleeding anywhere, could cure disease. Scientists believed that fire was made out of something called phlogiston. Women believed that rubbing dog urine on their face had anti-aging benefits. Astronomers believed that the sun revolved around the earth. When I was a little boy, I used to think mediocre was a kind of vegetable that I didn't want to eat. I thought my brother found a secret passageway into my grandmother's house because he could get outside without having to leave the bathroom. Spoiler alert, there was a window. I also thought that when my friend and his family visited Washington, B.C., they had somehow traveled back into time when dinosaurs lived because, after all, B.C. was a long time ago. As a teenager, I told everybody that I didn't care about anything, when the truth was I cared about way too much. Other people ruled my world without my even knowing. I thought happiness was a destiny and not a choice. I thought love was something that just happened, not something that you worked for. I thought being cool had to be practiced and learned from others rather than invented for oneself. When I was with my first girlfriend, I thought we would be together forever. And then when that relationship ended, I thought I'd never feel the same way about a woman again. And then, when I felt the same way about a woman again, I thought that love sometimes just wasn't enough. And then I realized that each individual gets to decide what enough is, and that love can be whatever we let it be. Every step of the way, I was wrong about everything. Throughout my life, I have been flat out wrong about myself, others, society, culture, the world, the universe, everything. And I hope that will continue to be the case for the rest of my life. Just as present Mark can look back on past Mark's every flaw and mistake, one day future Mark will look back on present Mark's assumptions, including the contents of this book, and notice similar flaws. And that will be a good thing, because that will mean that I have grown. Excuse me. There's a famous Michael Jordan quote about him failing over and over again, and that's why he succeeded. Well, I'm always wrong about everything, over and over again, and that's why my life improves. Growth is an endlessly iterative process. When we learn something new, we don't go from wrong to right. Rather, we go from wrong to slightly less wrong. And when we learn something additional, we go from slightly less wrong to slightly less wrong than that, and then to even less wrong than that, and so on. We are always in the process of approaching truth and perfection without actually ever reaching truth or perfection. We shouldn't seek to find the ultimate right answer for ourselves, but rather we should seek to chip away at the ways we are wrong today so we can be a little bit less wrong tomorrow. When viewed from this perspective, personal growth can actually be quite scientific. Our values are our hypothesis. This behavior is good and important. That other behavior is not. Our actions are the experiments. The resulting emotions and thought patterns are our data. There is no correct dogma or perfect ideology. There is only what your experience has shown you to be right for you, and even then, that experience is probably somewhat wrong too. And because you and I and everybody else all have differing needs and personal histories and life circumstances, we will all inevitably come to a differing correct answer about what our life means and how our lives should be lived. My correct answer involves traveling alone for years on end, living in obscure places, and laughing at my own farts. Or at least that was the correct answer up until recently. That answer will change and evolve because I change and evolve, and as I grow older and more experienced, I chip away at how wrong I am, becoming less and less wrong every day. Many people become so obsessed with being right about their life that they never end up actually living it. A certain woman is single and lonely and wants a partner, but she never gets out of the house and does anything about it. A certain man works his ass off and believes he deserves a promotion, but he never explicitly says that to his boss. They're told that they're afraid of failure, of rejection, of someone saying no. But that's not it. Sure, rejection hurts. Failure sucks. But there are particular certainties that we hold on to. Certainties that we are afraid to question or let go of. Values that have given our lives meaning over the years. That woman doesn't get out there and date because she would be forced to confront her beliefs about her own desirability. The man doesn't ask for the promotion because he would have to confront his beliefs about what his skills are actually worth. It's easier to sit in a painful certainty that nobody would find you attractive, that nobody appreciates your talents, than to actually test those beliefs and find out for sure. Beliefs of this sort, that I'm not attractive enough, so why bother, that my boss is an asshole, so why bother, are designed to give us moderate comfort now by mortgaging greater happiness and success later on. They're terrible long-term strategies, yet we cling to them because we assume we're right, because we assume we already know what's supposed to happen. In other words, we assume we know how the story ends. Certainty is the enemy of growth. Nothing is for certain until it has already happened, and even then, it's still debatable. That's why accepting the inevitable imperfections of our values is necessary for growth to take place. Instead of striving for certainty, we should be in constant search of doubt. Doubt about our own beliefs, doubt about our feelings, doubt about what the future may hold for us unless we get out there and create it for ourselves. Instead of looking to be right all the time, we should be looking for how we're wrong all the time, because we are. Being wrong opens us up to the possibility of change. Being wrong brings the opportunity for growth. It means not cutting your arm open to cure a cold, or splashing dog piss on your face to look young again. It means not thinking mediocre is a vegetable and not being afraid to care about things. Because here's something that's weird but true. We don't actually know what a positive or negative experience is. Some of the most difficult and stressful moments of our lives also end up being the most formative and motivating. Some of the best and most gratifying experiences of our lives are also the most distracting and demotivating. Don't trust your conception of positive or negative experiences. All that we know for certain is what hurts in the moment and what doesn't, and that's not worth much. So, for our focus moment today, I want you to remember one thing that you have been wrong about in the past. Imagine your younger, naive self and recall one belief or viewpoint this person had that you now believe is absolutely stupid, or rephrased less judgmentally, misguided. We'll call your past self the past gardener. And I want you to laugh about this. If you can't quite produce an audible, full-fledged, hearty laugh, that's okay. Start by smiling and feeling amused by how silly the past gardener was. Imagine yourself chuckling at this misguided, younger, past gardener, and then, if you can, make that chuckle real. Allow it to become as hilarious as you possibly can, and if you can build up to a contagious laughter, that is ideal. And remember, you are probably going to be laughing at present gardener 5 years from now, and if you're not, there's a problem. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I will speak with you again tomorrow.